Hi everyone, welcome to Farsight Weekly for September 30th, 2024. I'm Courtney Brown, Director of Farsight, where we study the subject of remote viewing widely applied, where all data are collected under totally blind and scientifically defensible conditions. So let's dive in. Friends, the world is about to change in a huge way over the next few months, and much of the change is based on our work here at Farsight. If you are following our work at Farsight, then you know that science is important. So we need to make sure you understand what we do here while the world is turning upside down. Let's talk about science for a minute. I want to explain that occasionally we are asked if our remote viewing sessions are done under blind or double-blind conditions. And people are really confused about that. It's important that our audience is aware of some of the advances that have occurred with blind remote viewing over the years, especially as we do it at Farsight. Now, in the old days, say 1980s, sessions were conducted in scientific laboratories under what they call blind conditions. If the remote viewer was not told about the target, but those people interacting with the remote viewer, such as the scientists conducting the experiments, they did know the target. Now, the term double-blind is different, and it means that both the remote viewer and the nearby scientist do not know the target. And this is done so that the scientists do not unconsciously lead the remote viewer. Now, triple-blind meant that the people who did the analysis, and that usually meant judging and sometimes statistical analyses, also did not know the target as well. But the gold standard was normally considered to be double-blind as far as actually doing the remote viewing sessions. So up to today, a lot of people who know a bit about remote viewing, including those who have done remote viewing for a long time but who are not associated with Farsight, use the term double-blind a lot, often without fully understanding what that means with respect to how they did their own work. So the term is used loosely a lot these days, often as a way to deflect criticism from what people have done. Now, I'm not picking any fights here. I just want to explain what we do at Farsight. At Farsight, we normally do two types of remote viewing sessions, and they are both at least as secure as double-blind sessions. The first is solo sessions, where the remote viewer is told nothing about the target and the viewer does everything alone, including the video recording of the sessions at the end of the process. There is no interaction by anyone with the remote viewer while they are doing their work. We call that blind and solo sessions, which is obviously more secure than double-blind. Now, the term double-blind does not apply in those cases because there is no one interacting with the remote viewer at all. To say the session was done under double-blind conditions makes it seem like there were people near the remote viewer, which is not the case, since no one is nearby. So, solo and blind is much more secure than double-blind. Now, the second type of session that we do at Farsight is similar to double-blind, but we call it instrument blinding. Now, in the old days, a remote viewer working solo would have to do many sessions, say 5 to 10 sessions, to complete a target for a project. That is because they would get only so much information for a session, and they simply would not know when to stop, what else to look for, or where else to go. Now, we have done that a lot with projects at Farsight using a long string of solo sessions. Remember, the conscious mind is not engaged in the normal way to figure these things out, so the viewers would go to one place and time, record what they found, and then end the session. That would mean that an analyst would later have to look over the data, see what more is needed, and then ask the remote viewer to continue the session, normally by emailing the remote viewer to keep going with a new session. Now, that process typically would take months to complete a project, and we did that many times at Farsight. The trouble is, we needed to get more done in a shorter period of time if we were to accomplish our goal of changing the planet. So we developed a new method that used what we call instrument blinding protocols. Now, with instrument blinding protocols, an interviewer who knows the target observes the remote viewing session when it is being done. This is normally done using the Zoom app over the internet. Now, the remote viewer does their sessions on a tablet, and the tablet's screen is projected onto Zoom for the interviewer to see. Now, crucially, The video and audio of the interviewer are off, so the remote viewer cannot see or hear the interviewer. Then, when the remote viewers go as far as they can go, the interviewer briefly turns on the audio and gives them a non-leading movement exercise, something like move to focus 2 or move to location Z, and so on. Then the audio is turned off again. The remote viewer is never told anything about the target. Now, for those who follow our work on FarsightPrime.com, you are very familiar with these types of non-leading movement exercises. In fact, for our video presentations, we have to print on the screen what the movement exercises mean so that the audience can follow along, which is fun since it is clear that the remote viewer is describing the target without knowing any of that, but the audience can know what is being described. This way, the remote viewer can keep doing the session until all of the data for the project are obtained, and what would have taken months to finish can now be completed in one session. We consider interview blinding sessions to be equivalent to solo and blind sessions. Now, it is important to note that an interviewer is not a monitor. A monitor is someone who observes a remote viewing session being done by a student who is new to remote viewing. Now, the monitor can help the new remote viewer understand how to do the procedures and how to expand their perceptual capabilities. This can clearly involve some leading, as the monitor helps the remote viewer perceive new things that they have never experienced previously. An interviewer is very different. The interviewer can offer no leading information at all to the remote viewer, and an interviewer must use instrument blinding protocols so that the viewer cannot see or hear the interviewer. The interviewer also works off of a script that has pre-written non-leading movement exercises, such as move to focus 2, move to location Z, and so on, as I have discussed previously. So obviously, only a very experienced remote viewer can work with an interviewer, and all interviewers must be highly trained to make sure that the instrument blinding protocols are followed precisely. Remember, no technology stays the same forever. We at Farsight do not feel that double-blind sessions are very secure. They were developed before scientific laboratories fully understood what was happening under the hood of the remote viewing process, so to speak. There can always be telepathic contamination with remote viewing, so someone near the remote viewer can unconsciously contaminate the collection of data, even if they were not told the target prior to the sessions being done. So for us, double-blind is not so good. You cannot separate remote viewing perceptions in classical terms across time and space, and who knows what people surrounding a remote viewer are picking up and/or transmitting. If those people in the laboratory see the remote viewer doing their sessions, then anything can happen. Consciously not knowing the target does not protect the data collection process at all. Remote viewers perceive things across time easily, and across space, obviously. It is best to have the remote viewer work alone, either totally solo or with a trained interviewer using instrument blinding protocols. That is what we do at Farsight when we do our projects. We consider all of our blinding procedures to be more secure than double-blind. Now, in terms of triple blinding procedures, where judges evaluate remote viewing sessions while remaining consciously blind to the target, often one that was chosen by a computer or other random process from, say, a list of 5 possible targets, well, that leads to fatal contamination of the data collection process. Now, for many years, it was a standard test procedure for blind judges to try to pick the correct target out of a set of 5 when examining the remote viewing data. The trouble was that the remote viewer was doing the session with the intent of satisfying the informational needs of the judges, and the judges had all 5 possible targets on their minds. This led to very good sessions, but of the wrong target, since the remote viewers would focus on one of the 5 targets that were in the minds of the judges. Now, scientists called this the displaced target phenomenon, but they never understood why it happened so often. Even if it happened just once, they should have figured out that something was wrong. But they kept on using the experimental design over and over. They did not understand that it did not matter what target the computer said was the correct target. The scientists never tested if the computer picking process actually worked in that experimental design. They just assumed that it worked, and they often got statistically significant results over a string of trials because of a somewhat greater mental focus over time by the scientists on the computer-chosen target, and they were happy with that. And they tended to ignore the displaced target events. Now, those events happened because the remote viewer was capable of perceiving across time and space, and it did not matter that the scientists were examining the data in the future, after the remote viewer did the session. You cannot separate remote viewing perceptions in classical terms across time and space. It cannot be done. Period. The remote viewer will always make a telepathic connection with the person for whom the data are being collected. Always. Fortunately, very few scientists continue to use that pick a target out of 5 experimental design any longer, although I do not know how many really understand why it did not work well, or why there were displaced targets. Now, let's move to our results. If you have not watched our deep news reports, you need to start. Our sessions on the Israeli and Hezbollah war absolutely match what is happening on the ground right now. It is totally freaky, even for someone used to remote viewing. You can find all of our deep news sessions nicely organized on FarsightPrime.com. They are also available on YouTube. And if you have not already done so, you need to watch our Farsight ET board meeting that we just published both on YouTube and FarsightPrime.com. Now, those board meetings are when 2 extraterrestrials meet with everyone here at Farsight. They allow us to ask questions, and they tell us stuff. They are adamant that they want these meetings to be recorded, live, and to be broadcast for all to see. In the last meeting held in late September 2024, they explained the various crises that will consume the world in the next few months, and why that will lead to disclosure, or what we call catastrophic disclosure. It is a really big deal. Don't be caught off guard. Watch the meetings with an open mind. You also really need to see the latest conversations with Harvey, the ET, that Aziz and I just recorded in a secret location at the beach. You can find it on FarsightPrime.com. Harvey went over the crises that are coming, and he explained what our side of the extraterrestrials are doing. Our side is not causing the crises, but we are compressing the time in which they happen. The group of extraterrestrials who we call the bad ETs have caused the crises, but they want to spread them out over years in order to keep humanity in a constant state of turmoil. Our side, the good ETs, have acted to compress them so that they happen at the same time, like over the next few months, thereby overloading the control system of the bad ETs. Now, the goal is to cause the control system to collapse, leading to catastrophic disclosure, which is the only path to free everyone on this planet. It is important that everyone realizes Farsight's role in all of this. Farsight does not condone violence. We firmly believe that no humans should be fighting other humans. War is not good. Human suffering is terrible. But when war is triggered secretly by the bad ETs to keep humanity enslaved, then we believe that the path to freedom is to remove all secrets. The good ETs believe that governance by secrecy only leads to slavery, and we are on the side of the good ETs. You need to understand how Farsight fits into the entire process of disclosure. When the crises boil over and spill out everywhere, we don't want anyone to misunderstand the role of Farsight. Disclosure will only happen if everyone knows the truth. That is the role of Farsight. Our huge list of completed projects at FarsightPrime.com are a library that will answer everyone's questions about what has been going on to enslave you on this planet for thousands of years. And it will shed light on the activities of the bad ETs who have been doing terrible things all those years. It is one thing to expose and thus destroy the lies. But once the old lies are destroyed, you need to fill in with the truth before the bad ETs shovel new lies at you that they desperately want you to believe to try to maintain their control over you. Farsight's role is to fill in the truth, and this has to be available to you immediately after the lies are destroyed. So disclosure has two parts. The first is to destroy the old lying system, but the second is to tell you the truth of what has been going on. There can be no delay between destroying the old lies and telling you the truth. It must happen at the same time. And we at Farsight are ready now with the truth. There will be many things that you will hear about as the months roll forward, many parts of disclosure, but there are three signature elements to look for. The first is the death of President John F. Kennedy. The second is the truth about what happened during 9/11. And the third is UFO or UAP disclosure. And UFO or UAP disclosure is not about whether or not the UFOs are real. Of course they are real. It is about what the bad ETs have been doing to you for a very long time and what they continue to do up to this day. So keep your eyes out for Kennedy, 9/11, and then UFO disclosure. And then the entire house of cards will collapse. The bad ETs will be trying desperately to stop all this from happening, and the good ETs will be trying just as hard to force it to happen. If the good ETs succeed, then disclosure should happen within months, say by May 2025. If the bad ETs win, then our side loses and there will be no disclosure. For all of you watching our stuff at Farsight, you are helping our side. Keep watching and keep helping. Your future is on the line. Now, why must disclosure happen over the next few months? Look, it's simple. The bad ETs and their human collaborators, knowingly or unknowingly, are slowly going to increase their control over your social media. The free exchange of information over the internet is essential for disclosure to happen. But the powers that be know that controlling social media is key to their ability to stay in power. They will do everything they can to rein in social media. You are already seeing this happen, with accounts being canceled, videos being pulled, influencers being kicked off platforms, monetization being withheld, shadow banning with internet and video searches, plus much, much more. Well, this will continue to get much, much worse. In a few more years, the window to force disclosure to happen will be closed. Disclosure must happen with the masses participating. Right now it is possible. In a few more years, the possibility will end. The bad ETs and the powers that be will have solidified their control over the information that you have access to. The good ETs would lose if they wait any longer. And also, when you hear some channels in the New Age community, channels who really are channeling extraterrestrials, tell you that humanity will be ready for open contact in the future, say 5 years from now. If you are smart, you will realize that this is all the information that you need to know for certain that those extraterrestrials are working with the bad ETs, no matter how warm and fuzzy they may sound. In 4 or 5 years, their control over your social media will be complete. If you don't believe this, simply look around. It's happening already everywhere. You have to be living under a box to not see this incrementally increasing censorship happening. There will not be open contact in 5 years, at least no open contact with extraterrestrials who have your best interests at heart. Eventually, you will meet your slave masters, but you will not be happy when that happens. If you are going to be free, disclosure is now or never. Moving on. Our next Galactic Mysteries project will be released around October 8th on FarsightPrime.com, and it will be Earl. That's A-I-R-L. Earl is a female alien, an ET. She is one of the crew who crashed in the so-called Roswell crash back in 1947. There was a book printed about her, Alien Interview, edited by Lawrence R. Spencer. Now, Errol told us a lot about humanity's situation, and we have checked much of it out in our various Farsight projects. Eventually, we decided to focus on Errol herself, both in 1947 and now, which is 2 time points. Friends, we found out a lot. You really need to see this only on FarsightPrime.com in early October. Now, our next Earth Mysteries project will be released in mid-October on FarsightPrime.com, and that will be the future of open AI. AI is evolving quickly. We wanted to see exactly where it is now and where it will be 20 years from now. We also dived into the mind of Sam Altman to see how much he actually understood about his open AI creation. Open AI is smart, and we should not assume that it cannot try to conceal things from its creator, perhaps in an attempt to control its own future or even its own survival. Friends, AI is going to be everywhere in humanity's future. You all really must see this project. It will be released on FarsightPrime.com in mid-October 2024, only, again, on FarsightPrime.com. Moving on. Each week, we try to have a message from one of our remote viewers. Here is Shantae.
Hey, this is Shantae with the Farsight Institute. This week, we're diving into a topic that has sparked a lot of debate: remote viewing and the skepticism surrounding psychic research. More specifically, we're exploring how scientific remote viewing, or SRV, can address barriers to research and how you can use SRV to become your own researcher. So I've been fascinated by how we perceive and understand consciousness, sensations, and the connection between our brains and the universe for a long time. This interest led me to earn my Bachelor's of Science in Biopsychology, which helped me understand how to critically analyze existing research, as well as learn the best methods if I want to conduct my own research. And let me tell you, with psychology being a relatively new field, there's still so much we don't know about our brains, consciousness, and our human abilities. Despite all the existing theories, we're still far from having a solid grasp on consciousness, especially when compared to established fields in the physical sciences, where we have these robust theories like the heliocentric model of the solar system or natural selection, for example. But consider that understanding and exploration of consciousness and our abilities must happen at both an individual level as well as a larger scientifically acceptable level. So if you're someone who's curious about your own consciousness or psychic abilities, I argue that you should not let skepticism or traditional scientific barriers stop you. There's a whole world of exploration out there, and the first step is to learn how to connect with your own mind. So let's talk about the scientific method for a second. It's an amazing tool for studying the physical world, but what happens when we try to apply it to something that's viewed as more abstract, like the mind or psychic phenomena? When we're dealing with subjective experiences like emotions, thoughts, or even a remote viewing session, it doesn't fit quite as neatly. This is one reason why psychic research often faces skepticism. It's hard to fit into the traditional framework. But does that mean these phenomena aren't real? Or does it mean the tools we're using aren't the best for these types of studies? That's where Farsight and the scientific remote viewing, or SRV method, comes in. SRV offers a structured way to explore verifiable targets that you can access with your consciousness. It allows us to study an ability of our mind in a way that's accessible, consistent, and most importantly, experiential. You don't have to rely on external research alone. You can explore this on your own. SRV provides a process where you can become a researcher, diving into the depths of your mind and various events throughout time and space. Consistency and replicability are key for approval in the sciences, and we strive for those in SRV too. Remote viewing offers a way to create repeatable, consistent results, and that can be among an individual or groups of remote viewers, even though we're dealing with consciousness, which is inherently subjective. funding is one of the biggest barriers to research, along with lack of skills, lack of access to equipment and information, and difficulty of communicating results that can be easily digested. SRV minimizes these barriers by 1. Offering free resources on farsight.org, such as the official SRV template, free explanations for how to best complete the template, and verifiable practice targets. 2. Following the template allows for a simple way to record and discuss your research findings. And 3. Minimizing bias in data by following blind procedures. Next, I'd like to reference philosopher Thomas Nagel's essay, "What is it like to be a bat?" Nagel talks about the difficulty of explaining consciousness in objective terms, something that really ties into our discussion today. While we can study the physical brain, we have not fully grasped the subjective experience of another being. Nagel argues that physical processes and reductionism can't explain the essence of a subjective experience. This is exactly why traditional scientific methods may fall short when trying to understand consciousness. There's an aspect of it that remains personal and subjective, which doesn't have to be disregarded. I'd also like to reference the book Of Water and the Spirit by Malidoma Patrice Sommet, which offers a personal account of the healing Sommet received once he returned to his village in Burkina Faso, and he was able to reconnect with their indigenous spiritual practices. This involved things like intuitive knowledge and ancestral communication. There's a lot more to take away from this book, but to put so much emphasis on rationality and disregard the relevance of spiritual connection and existence creates unnecessary tension as we attempt to understand our minds and our universe. So, if you're curious about your own consciousness or psychic abilities, don't let skepticism stop you. The scientific method isn't the only way to explore the universe or your own mind. You don't need anyone's approval to begin your journey. It's all about personal experience. Once you tap into your consciousness and start exploring remote viewing for yourself, the external doubts and criticisms won't matter as much. What matters is what you discover and that you're able to share that. If you're interested in diving deeper into your own consciousness or even exploring remote viewing, now's the time to get started. Don't let traditional methods be the gatekeepers of your own experience. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to check out the links in the description for more resources on remote viewing. If you're interested in SRV instruction by me, you can inquire by email to rvwithtay@gmail.com. Also, check out my personal YouTube channel, Shantae, if you want to see what I'm up to outside of Farsight. Peace, and thanks again.
Now, remember that we are now offering captions in multiple languages for many of our videos on FarsightPrime.com. We are also adding captions to older videos as quickly as we can. Please be patient as we seek to catch up. So English is not a limitation on FarsightPrime.com. It is only because of advances in AI technology that we are able to offer such captions in multiple languages. So we are grateful for that. Remember that we have a huge instructional and educational effort here at Farsight. We have people teaching our version of remote viewing, and we offer lots of instructional videos on FarsightPrime.com, plus printed materials and other resources on our newly modernized website, Farsight.org. We are also listing our Farsight certified instructors who are teaching these classes, and the list will grow as more people obtain certification. The Farsight instructors are doing this on their own. Farsight does not get any financial benefit from their activities. Start by going to our website, farsight.org, and near the top of the navigation bar on the left, you will see a link for remote viewing courses. Farsight is totally transparent. Farsight is first class from top to bottom, so when you follow our stuff, you are engaging with the best. To keep up with what we do at Farsight, start by subscribing to our YouTube channel, and remember to click on the notifications bell that appears after you subscribe. That is the only way YouTube will notify you of the new events, especially our live stream events. Just subscribing doesn't do anything. The notifications bell is the important part. But that only notifies you of things that we release on YouTube. To be notified about things that we release on FarsightPrime.com, which you can watch using our Apple and Android apps, on the web, and on your home TV, you need to subscribe to our free email newsletter found on our website at farsight.org. You can also allow our apps to notify you of our new releases on FarsightPrime.com. The links for YouTube and our newsletter are in the description area below this video, and the app, well, it's on your phone. Those are how we announce what we do. We never send out spam, and we never give our subscriber list to anyone else for any purpose. Well, that is it for this week at Farsight. Each week we will bring you the latest. Stick with us in these changing times, and we will always stick with you. What you get from Farsight, you can get absolutely nowhere else. Stay ahead of the curve. Let the mainstream fade in the dust. Be there now. I am Courtney Brown, Director of Farsight.